Zandon's poetry in motion. Big horse, but light on his feet. And he's always showed up and been consistent and been right there with some of the top horses in training. In the Bluegrass Stakes, he showed his determination and his raw ability.
It's over! Zandon wins the Toyota Bluegrass!
I feel breeders will be really blown away by what a striking, outstanding-looking horse he is.
Sure Bet Coffee. Put the giddy up in your cup.
Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
Top 10 first crop sire in 2023, standing at McMahon of Saratoga. 14 first crop winners, including My Shady Lady, winner of the $500,000 New York Stallion Series 5th Avenue Stakes. Grade 2 winner, Winstock, and stakes winner, Solo Shot. Solo Meanie, the 7th leading freshman sire and the only top 10 freshman sire with a grade 1 or grade 2 winner. He sired a $700,000 2-year-old at the OBS April sale. His juveniles sold for nearly 6 figures on average, more than 12 times the stud fee. Solomini, a controversial DQ from being a grade 1 winner by 2-time Horse of the Year Curlin, standing at McMahon of Saratoga Thoroughbreds.
Ciao.
Hey, John.
How are you?
Doing? Good.
I'm good. We're getting, into the home stretch, turning for home for the Kentucky Derby, I would say.
Yeah. This is it. We're on to the 100-point races and catching Derby fever.
Yeah, there's just a couple more weeks of the prep races left. The pretenders and contenders are kind of sorting themselves out. We put up our Kentucky Derby seminar. I'll put a link to it in this video early this year. That's because we're ready. We've got some opinions. We've got 2 races to talk about today. We'll have a couple more coming up in the near future. What's left? The Bluegrass, the Wood Memorial, the Lexington as that last minute thing, and the Florida Derby, which is on the horizon. So
I saw that they're gonna breeze Victory Avenue tomorrow, and the Florida Derby still on the table, and they might even ship them up to Aqueduct for the Wood, which would be exciting.
Lofty ambitions, but hey, it worked out for them last year, and they were aggressive with Mage. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, let's dive into Turfway here. If I can pull up the right race, give me 1 second. I'm sorry.
It helps to have the right race for sure.
So I think right off the rip here, it sounds like Agate Road is going to be in Louisiana. So I don't know. Does that change the dynamics of this race?
Well, I mean, the dynamics, I don't know that that's the word I use, but it certainly, takes a contender for the win out of it. I thought he was a prime contender to win the race, and, now he's not in it. So I think, I guess I would have to say yes to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, who stuck out to you here? I had 2 that I thought had a shot.
Who were the two you liked?
This Lucky Jeremy feels like he's kind of improving as the distances get longer. Not that anybody coming out of the Sunland Derby is world beaters, but I feel like that was a decent race for him. And like I've talked about before, just looking at the DRF PPs here, pairing a top, especially to start the 3-year-old year, I expect this horse to be sitting on another forward move. So this is one that I was interested in. And the other one was the 10, Endlessly. A couple of reasons. Again, just feels like that first start as a 3-year-old was promising, certainly eligible to move forward. And, his figures are as good as anybody in the race. So any forward move from him puts him right in the mix. And then just interesting too, that, Rispoli is going out to Turfway. Same thing with Frankie Dettori. Like, I don't know, just a little, it's got to be a good sign. I think you're going to get two of the top riders out west to go to Turfway Park. I think that's a positive sign. So Endlessly and Lucky Jeremy, for me, I'd probably, depending on the prices, I'd probably lean on a win bet with Lucky Jeremy if I had to pick one of the two.
Yeah, and let me ask you this: any concern about Lucky Jeremy hitting the synthetic for the first time?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because a lot of times I feel like how that plays. We hear a lot about the synthetic playing more like turf and whatnot. So yeah, could be a concern. So we'll have to see, but no one else in here really got me excited.
I tend to agree with you. I lean to endlessly as well. He came off the turf, went up to Northern California, and really ran a pretty nice race, winning that El Camino Real Derby. I kind of look at the El Camino Real Derby and this race as a backdoor way into the Derby because they're points races, but they're on synthetic and the Derby's on the dirt, as we know. So, it's an interesting way to get a grass horse into the Derby, but it's always been said, and I think the stats will prove it if you really do a big enough study. Grass horses tend to run well over the Churchill Downs dirt, better than they do over a lot of other dirt courses. So it's not, impossible for them to win. This race has produced Kentucky Derby winners in the past. Animal Kingdom, and I think one other. I forget who it is off the top of my head, but I know at least one other. But it's not the toughest field. It usually doesn't come up the toughest field. And it's a nice
race though.
In there. Yeah, no, I agree.
It's like, you can't really, it's like a double-edged sword, right? It's like, this isn't a race that would get you excited on a regular Saturday, but somehow, some way, this race has produced some key Kentucky Derby runners the last couple of years. So you have to watch it, you have to respect it, and you have to, do your due diligence coming out of it for sure.
All right. Let's take a look at two other horses real quick. Why don't you scroll to Noted? Any interest in him? He's he's okay on the grass. His last was kind of a question mark at best, but before that, his grass races were good. He winds up, in the race, hitting the synthetic for the first time. He worked over the Gulfstream synthetic. I find that a little interesting that, Todd brought him over to work over at the Gulfstream, synthetic track. 10 to 1 on the morning line. I can't imagine he stays that price, but what's your take on Noted? I thought he was a little sneaky.
Yeah, he might be. I don't know. It feels like, I don't know.
Just taking a shot to get in?
Yeah, it just seems like this year Rapoli doesn't have a standout, and he's just throwing everything at the wall to see.
I think he would argue with that if he was here. I think he would argue that fierceness is still number one and a standout. I disagree and agree with you. I don't think the horse has been consistent enough to call him anything close to that.
Where did that what was it, the Holy Bull that he ran in? Did that race take so much out of him that we haven't seen him in 6 weeks?
Well, no, the plan was they said they were going to run in the Holy Bull and the Florida Derby, just those two. That was their plan. So I don't know. Interesting, though.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like he has a lot of 1B, 2A type horses that he's just throwing everything at the wall to see how many he can get in there. And I haven't been totally impressed with anything that he's sent forward yet this year. So
no argument. The other one I wanted to look at, Scrolt, what is his name? Otello or I forget his name. Other way.
Oh yeah, the 8.
Yes.
Yeah, this was him. Yeah, he had there was some decent buzz around this horse coming out of the Mucho Macho Man, but I don't know, like, here's a question for you. Because as we're getting towards these final prep races, typically what we've seen is those last 2 preps tend to be the most indicative of Derby success. And
right.
I have a big question about this when we start talking about the Louisiana Derby. But how much of a pass are you willing to give horses in that second to last prep that we know traditionally is pretty critical? It's hard for me to give horses a pass as we get closer and closer. It just feels like you're, trying to be too cute, I think.
I understand exactly what you're saying. And when I don't know the reason, I tend to agree with you. But, when I see bumped start, and I watched the replay a couple of times, and I really can't tell how much that may or may not have taken out of this colt. But we did talk on one of the earlier Derby Radar shows about how significant a bump at the start can be if it takes the wind out of a horse,
Right.
So not knowing the answer to that makes this horse a bit of a question mark and makes me say, maybe. And if I go back to the Mucho Macho Man, it's tough to win at Gulfstream coming off the pace. It's tough to win at Gulfstream at 1 mile and 1/16 with that short finish off the pace. So while I agree in theory that it's kind of getting a little cute and creative to, give these horses passes in these last two prep races, when I could find excuses that kind of make sense to me, I'm more inclined to do so. And Otello, the jury is still out for me because I respect Christophe Clement. I think that if you go to his first 2 races, he shows that he is a distance horse. He's got some ability. He's got some upside. And if there was a legitimate excuse for that race, then maybe he's a contender. My knock, believe it or not, is the spot that he puts him in. He's putting him on the synthetic instead of one of the other races, which I don't view as a really lack of confidence, as a vote of confidence. I view it more as a, let's see if we can, like I said earlier, take the back door in, and then once you're in, anything could happen.
Yeah, right. Like you have to think if that that start in the Holy Bull, where we were just talking about fierceness got banged around too. That's the horse that we were talking about. Potentially having the issue with that, and perhaps that's why he ran poorly. If you think that it was the same sort of scenario for Otell as the trainer, wouldn't you? The horse was 5-1 in the Holy Bull. There was some decent talk about him in the lead up to that race. Wouldn't you think if that was the case, they would just run him back in the Florida Derby, figuring he was a contender with what'll most likely be a handful of the same horses, rather than shipping him to a new surface, a new track, and seemingly against horses that are a cut or two below what he would have faced in the Florida Derby?
I would agree. I would agree. I can't argue with that. And he's going to be the favorite, but I come back to endlessly on the outside. I think Umberto gets that nice grass horse to run by him all late. I think he's probably the classiest horse in the race. We know he handles the synthetic now. And I think he probably runs by these all late.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if that is how that race played out.
Now, the Louisiana Derby, I think we could spend a little bit more time on. I think it's a much more interesting race, and there's a horse I like in there that's kind of got my attention, and I don't know that he's going to fly under the radar. We'll see, but I think there's a lot of contenders in this race. And you know what's interesting? I find that the Louisiana Derby usually has a good field, usually has a lot of hype. Usually people talk about how the Louisiana Road to Churchill Downs and the Run for the Roses is, all that and more. But how many Derby winners come out of the Louisiana Derby?
Well, I think Mandaloun was the last one,
and I don't count him a winner. Yeah, I'm talking about horses that actually finished first.
Yeah,
for me to win the Derby, you gotta actually finish first. But no, I get it. He's the winner in the books anyway. But
you're right.
They gone around again. He was not getting past Medina Spirit, but that's just my opinion. But the race should be a great setup race for the Derby. It's out long enough, time-wise, to recover from that mile and 3/16. I think that and the Dubai race are the only mile and 3/16 preps. So you would think a lot more horses would come out of this and win. Epicenter probably could have, if not for a fluky race and scenario by Rich Strike. But I think there's a reason we don't see more winners come out of this race than we do. I don't know what the answer to that is, but there's a reason for everything, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think last year, sorry, I got something stuck in my throat.
Doesn't happen to anybody.
There was, Kings Barnes was,
a lot of hype. Yeah.
A lot of hype. Didn't run all that much. I want to say maybe the Louisiana Derby was like his third start or something like that. And he went off favored and took him all the way around and ran ran a decent race. You know, and I think maybe went off at like 10-1, 11-1 in the Derby, something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a little far out still. But perhaps with, how horses are being conditioned nowadays, maybe in the next couple of years, this sort of 6-week break might be more advantageous than the 4 or 5 that we typically see horses winning the Derby off of. But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of talk about Louisiana horses, and very rarely are they winning. They'll get in the mix for some underneath spots, but very rarely are they winning out of this race, I think.
Well, let's go down every horse real quick, and I'll give you my thoughts on it, because I think what's interesting about this race is it's got a lot of contenders in it. There's one I lean to above all the others, but I think this race has a lot of contenders. So why don't we run them down? And we'll start with Triple Espresso, who is a question mark, but I have to call a contender. He's in Omaha Beach, trying the dirt for the first time. Another Rapole St. Elias horse that they're just taking a shot to get in. But, he's got Saez. He's got a mile and 3/16. If he takes to the dirt, he's going to be running at the end. I got to call him a contender. You?
I think it just goes back to my last point about Rapoli just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. I don't see it.
Jim says pretender. Okay. Hall of Fame. I'm going to call him a contender. And I'm going to call him a contender because his first 2 races on the dirt were very good, improving. He caught the slop, didn't fire at all. I'm assuming he's going to be back on a fast track on Saturday. That means he can run back to one of those other races. I call him a contender.
So here's the question that I have, because a lot of these horses in here coming back in out of the Risen Star, which, the track was super sloppy that day. A lot of them, first time they're running over a sloppy track, but we're getting close here. And a lot of them didn't run great in the Risen Star. Do we just draw a line through that because it was a sloppy track and, they just got beat by Sierra Leone, who, for all intents and purposes is the Derby favorite right now? I don't know. It felt like
I'm going to say I take that on a horse by horse basis. I'm going to draw a line through some, and I'm not through others. I mean, the horses that ran well, I think you can say, you can count that race on its face value. Some of the horses that just didn't fire, I think maybe you can draw a line through. I think Hall of Fame looks like the kind of horse that you can draw a line through, because he either completely regressed and bounced and fell apart after that big maiden win, or he didn't like the slop. We'll find out the answer to that, maybe on Saturday.
Yeah. I kind of liked him in the Risen Star, but we'll get to him later. But I'm not super sold on Track Phantom, and Track Phantom keeps finishing ahead of all of these horses. So Hall of Fame's got to be a pretender in this one for me.
Okay, interesting. Who's next? Who's next?
We've got Antiquarian, if I'm pronouncing that right.
You are, I believe, and I'm going to call him a contender. He ran good on the dirt, going a mile first time out at Gulfstream Park. duking it out all the way, and then he duked it out all the way at the fairgrounds in the slop to get the win. Johnny Sticks, another Todd Pletcher horse, improving, no knocks.
Yeah, no disagreement. I'm lukewarm on this.
Okay. Are you calling him a contender or a pretender? You're going to say contender.
Sure, contender.
Okay. All right. So far, everybody's a contender for me. But I do have a top choice. Agate Road, I'm going to call a contender. I liked his race a lot in the in the Sam Davis. He was very, very far back. He looked like he had no shot to do anything. Then it looked like he could actually, maybe even win it from as far back as he was. He really couldn't. But he looks a little dangerous to me. And he looks like the kind of horse who, even if he doesn't win on Saturday in the Louisiana Derby, if he winds up in the gate for the Kentucky Derby, he definitely looks like a horse that's going to be running at the end of the race if there's any kind of pace meltdown or everybody falls apart. He's another one. Like I said, to me, this race is filled with contenders, and he's another one of them.
Yeah, contender for sure. Mainly for me, I think because as the distance is getting longer, I think he's going to be one of a couple in here that is going to be still moving later in the race. It's a little concerning to me, and I know we gotta take every race sort of individually on its face, but he finished second behind No More Time, who ran okay. I thought ran a fine Tampa Bay Derby, but didn't win. I don't know. That's a little bit of a knock for me against Agate Road, I think.
I agree with that, but his trip kind of
Sure.
negates that a little bit for me. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
But I definitely see what you're saying for sure.
Contender, but I wouldn't be betting Agate Road to win.
Gotcha.
Catching Freedom, on the other hand, this is where I landed.
Interesting. Okay.
I thought he was moving quite well towards the end of the Risen Star, coming out of it. Sierra Leone, like we just talked about, Track Phantom, and Catching Freedom. Obviously, the top three finishers feel like they handled the wet track well. And anytime you ask a trainer about horses handling the mud, and we're, like you said, we're going to get a fast track on Saturday, but I feel like when you can handle the mud, it just shows that you're a top quality horse when you can run well in the mud and on a fast track like he has. Paired his two top numbers like we see here to start his 3-year-old season. I think any move forward puts him square in this race, and Catching Freedom for Brad Cox was my top choice here.
Okay. Not my top choice. Definitely call him a contender. For all the reasons you said, no real knock on the horse. Going back to a fast track, his 2 wins are on a fast track, so that's kind of attractive on his side of the table. So he's definitely a contender for sure. Awesome Rita. I think this is my first pretender. Just looks way over his head.
Yeah, agree. I mean, really was, for the most part, a non-factor in that Risen Star. Next.
Yeah, I agree. Anna Marie, interesting horse. Won the Kentucky Jockey Club Grade 2. Trained by a former assistant to Chad Brown. A lot of hype around this horse going into the Risen Star, if you remember.
Mhm.
Didn't really run his race. Takes Bejarano off, puts another rider on, not really a high profile rider. Maybe he didn't like the slop that day. I don't know. You think he can bounce back?
I was pretty disappointed in the effort here in the Risen Star. Um, and I don't know that I can realistically back this horse off of that. I guess a good sign that they're staying down there for this one. I don't know. I just was expecting a better run last time, and because the other prior race, second career start was in the mud,
Right.
and wasn't a bad race. I went back
No.
and watched that replay. It wasn't terrible. So a little perplexing why he didn't really run all that well last time in the Risen Star. So pretender for me.
Me too. He likes Churchill, so I guess if he winds up in the gate for the Derby, you got to kind of respect his record over that track. He's 2 for 3 at Churchill Downs with the one loss coming in the slop. So I'm going to call him a pretender here. I don't like him. I don't like him off the last race, but that doesn't mean I'll call him a pretender come the first Saturday in May if he gets in the gate off that record over the track. Next level is another pretender for me. He's got a lot of bottom, but just doesn't look good enough. Looks a cut below.
Yeah, same. Hasn't really shown much to get me interested here.
Agree.
This Real Men Violin, again, like I was just expecting a little bit more last time, and the muddy track and all that. Like I get, like I asked earlier, it's tough for me to give them all a pass for that Risen Star, and I just was not thrilled with this horse last time out, and like Honor Marie, I just can't back this horse off that effort. Fast track or sloppy track.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to call him a contender. I think that was his first race back off the layoff. Sloppy track that might not have been the go day. They might have just said, you know what, let's not, take too much out of him. We can come back in the Louisiana Derby and get our points and get in that way. Ken McPeak is pretty sneaky at that kind of stuff. He's a Mendelssohn. I'm really high on the Mendelssohns. And I think that he might run a much improved race from what he did last time on Saturday. So I'm going to call Real Men Violin a contender at a big price.
Okay. This Common Defense. Yeah,
He'll probably be the more highly regarded of McPeak horses, and I like the other one much better. So, to me, this guy's a pretender. He's got that one good race in the Rebel.
Yeah.
Not enough for me. I know Timberlake is well thought of, but I don't think there was much behind him that day. So he's a pass. Even though Brian Hernandez, who I like a lot, winds up here. Like I said, he's the more highly regarded of the two McPeaks. But I often wind up going to the guy's other horse, whoever it is. So that's my scenario here.
Yeah, like it's really whether or not you believe that last race. If you think he's can move forward off that, then, by all means, he's one of the faster horses in the race.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I'm not super high on this horse.
Tuscan Gold. That's where I land.
Okay.
I like Tuscan Gold. Top choice. I think he's an up and comer. I'll forgive that one race at Aqueduct in November, going a mile. He's a Medaglia d'Oro out of a curling mare. Come to Gulfstream Park, just annihilated that field. Tyler Sticks, I think he gets a nice stalking trip. I love the mile and 3/16 for this colt. I love when Chad makes these aggressive moves like this, right out of the maiden. He knows where they belong. He would not run him here. He knows the competition. If he didn't think he belonged, he would not run him. And I think this could be a budding. I don't want to use the word star, but a budding serious horse / contender. And that's where I land.
Yeah, I mean,
Chad knows these horses. He beat him with Sierra Leone, and he's bringing this one here. So if that's good enough for me. I see what I see in that race at Gulfstream Park, and I watched it a couple of times, and I think the horse is really just coming into his own. But I love the fact that Chad. I love Chad with those kind of aggressive moves. He's just, he excels at that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this horse is, if I'm throwing everybody else out off of that Risen Star effort, this is, a so-called new shooter, I guess, if you will. So, certainly going to be midway through the field in terms of a price, I would imagine. So,
Yeah,
certainly possible for sure.
Now, I guess we get to the favorite, Track Phantom. The post position did him no favors whatsoever, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because,
no, you got a long run into that first turn. I wouldn't read that much into it.
Yeah, especially for him too. He's going to shoot out of there and go right to the front. So it's just a matter of whether or not he's able to take him all the way around. He got beat by a better horse in Sierra Leone last time in the Risen Star. Seemed like Track Phantom, handled the mud well enough. I don't know. I haven't been high on this horse at all, really. And at that short of a price that, I'm assuming he's going to be, it just feels like there are a couple of other horses that are going to be moving a little bit better than him towards the end. And I'm going to go elsewhere.
I agree. I'm going to call him a pretender as the favorite. And it's funny because I got so many contenders in this race, and I wind up on a favorite calling him a pretender. But I call it how I see it, and I agree. I think he got run down on the square by Sierra Leone, who I think is the leading candidate for the Derby right now. And I've thought that since before the Remsen. So right. I haven't wavered off that opinion. And that's one of the reasons I like Tuscan Gold, because Chad knows Sierra Leone was able to beat this horse. I don't think he'd be so anxious to throw Tuscan Gold in there if he didn't think that he had a shot to do it as well. But before that, he beat Nash. We know Nash, who I was high on early on, as was Florent Giroux and Brad Cox. Turned out to be somewhat of a disappointment. Hasn't put it together yet. You know, before that, this horse was okay, but not, you know, not really, you know, beating anybody that good. You know, now he's got to, you know, really step up his game again. I think he's been steady, but I don't see him getting better. I see other horses in this race getting better. So I'm going to call him a pretender as the favorite and absolutely look to beat him. I think he's very vulnerable on Saturday.
Yeah, right. I think you made an excellent point. He's been consistent and he's won, but he hasn't made that big leap forward this year. And I feel like a lot of these other horses are sitting on forward moves, and I feel like we already know what we're going to get out of Track Phantom. And going off as the favorite, I think you gotta look elsewhere. For me, it's Catching Freedom. You know, I think you made some really good points on Tuscan Gold. So, you know, I would look to work him into, you know, any potential multi-race bets, but Catching Freedom is the one that I'm most high on in this one.
So it's Catching Freedom for Jim. It's Tuscan Gold for me. And it's, my opinion, a very interesting race with a lot of possibilities, a lot of ways to go, a lot of contenders. We both agree that the favorite's vulnerable, which, you know, makes for a great betting race. Mile and 3/16 should set some of these horses up very, very well for Louisville. So this is a great race to bet, especially if you don't like Track Phantom. And it's also a great race to watch because you may see something in here that you want to follow up on in the Derby and you know, try and capitalize on or gain a little bit of an edge. So we'll be paying attention to the fairgrounds on Saturday for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then,
all right,
then a waterfall of final Derby preps over the next couple of weeks. And
yeah,
we start to...
I'm a little disappointed that notable speech, that horse from Godolphin that I really liked, is not in the UAE Derby as far as I could see. So I guess they're keeping him on the grass. That's somewhat disappointing for me because I think that horse can run on anything, but I don't call the shots for Godolphin, so I had no say in that decision whatsoever, or he would have been in the UAE Derby, but he's not. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. If you like the show, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. You won't miss any of our episodes. The Derby seminar is up. You can join now, get an early spot. You can't be too early, but you could definitely be too late. So I guess we'll be back next week with more Kentucky Derby radar.
First crop sires race. Maximum Mischief makes the lead with the most 2-year-old maiden special winners by any sire. On the backstretch, Mitoli and Omaha Beach close the gap with stakes performers from coast to coast. Vino Rosso finds his best and leads on the turn with 4 Grade 1 colts on dirt. But it's Mitoli with his 3rd TDN Rising Star, your champion freshman, leading an impressive Spendthrift Superfecta.
Nobody does it better.